Hi, I'm Susanna Rodriguez. Welcome to the TalkativeChic Podcast. Today's guest was my dear friend, Barbara Peterson. I always tell her, Barbara, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. And she just laughs. She's an amazing person, and she's a sweet friend to me. And we talked about abusive relationships, verbally abusive. I felt like the relationship we talked about was also very controlling and manipulative. And a lot of times people can fall into that type of relationship, and it's hard to get out. And it was really good that she opened up and explained every stage of that relationship and the progression of how all of that happened. I really hope you enjoy the episode. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for alerts, and comment if you wish, and hit the like button. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a good one. My guest on TalkativeChic Podcast today is none other than my friend, Barbara Peterson. How are you, Barbara?
I'm fine. Thank you.
That's good. It's so good to have you here today. I'm so glad you came. Barbara's been my friend for quite some time now. I want to say I met her probably around 2017 or 2016. Was it 2017?
Yeah.
Okay. The way I met Barbara is really unique because I wanted to try my hand at acting at one point. So I signed up for Second City, and I signed up for Acting 1. And I remember going and being so excited and not knowing what to expect. And then I met her there, and we, in acting, you meet each other really quick because you're introducing each other, you're talking about topics, and it just gets to be like this really nice little family. Mm-hmm. And then we started to talk and say like, hey, why don't we go out for drinks like every once in a while or after each 8 weeks that we do class. So then we hung out, and then by Acting 2 we were good friends. And
Yeah.
I will remember one special thing that you said to me, and I was like, that's it, she's my friend. We were in Acting 2, and we were asked, is your space small or is it big, like for people? And I said that my space was always really big. Like I was just always like, let everybody in, And then they got to you, and you said yours was pretty small, but she goes, but you know what? Susanna can have any space she wants because she's such a nice person. And I was just like, oh my God, I just felt it was just such a sweet compliment and comment. And I was like, wow, she really wants to be my friend. And that was just really nice. And so from there, we went to Acting 3 and 4, and then we've just always connected. And then you went into storytelling, which I think is amazing. I always say I want to be like Barbara when I grow up because she's like, she goes skiing, she does karate, she does yoga and storytelling. So tell us a little bit about the storytelling. How did you get involved with that? I think it's something so unique and cool.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I remember walking into Acting 1 and your smiling face, I immediately felt like drawn to you. It was,
Aww.
You were just so open and sweet. And if you remember, like Michael's first day of class in every level, I called it group therapy time.
Yeah.
Where everyone had to share something personal, and that does kind of form cohesion. But I remember yours made me cry, and mine made you cry. So
Yeah.
we were on the same page.
Yeah.
But actually, it was at Second City that I also took, besides acting and improv, I took the first storytelling class.
Oh, okay.
And I think most storytellers, when they first tell a story, it's like a mission story, and it's something that you really, really want people to know. It's something you've discovered, or if you had a problem and you've overcome it, you want to share how you did that.
Okay.
And but I really, really liked it. I really just really liked it. And from there, I went to Scott Whitehair's classes of both beginning and advanced storytelling, and I got on stage. You were there,
Yeah.
for my first curated show.
Yeah, it was really super
Oh my
cool.
God, it was so great having you sit there, right there in the front row, having my friend. Well, what were there, about 75, 80 people?
Yeah,
It was like, oh,
it was pretty substantial. Yeah,
it was pretty cool. So, and it's just taken off from there. And in a way, COVID has had the big silver lining for me that all these venues that I could never access, like the Boston group. Like, I'm not going to fly to Boston every Tuesday to tell a story on stage.
right.
But so many have now gone via Zoom. It's like they're from Oregon and Michigan and New Jersey and here and there. So
Yeah.
it's really kind of helped in a way quite a bit.
Like expand it.
Yeah, I still like performing on stage. And actually, I signed up for Another Moth, which is
Oh,
a week
wow.
from Monday. I'm going to tell another story. So
That is
a Moth
awesome.
Slam. And that's going to be live at the Space in Evanston.
Oh my goodness! Remind me of that, because I think maybe I
come
can
with me.
come.
That'd be so
Yeah,
cool.
that would be cool. I like Evanston. They have it's a really cool town. One of my friends lives out there. It's
Yeah.
and I do want to experience the Moth experience, because I know you've talked about that before. And Barbara is a really good storyteller. I'm not just saying that because she's my good friend. She is very captivating, very eloquent. Just the way she maps words together is like phenomenal. It really, really, really is.
Well, thank you. I do work a lot at it. It's not, it's something that you don't want the work to show, but you do spend hours doing it, like anything, like you working on your comedy.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a lot of hours to to do just for a short amount of time on stage. It really, to get prepared, right? And today's subject that we're going to talk about is being in verbally abusive relationships. And I think it's so important to talk about this because I feel like a lot of women go through this, and I know that there's definitely a distinction between being physically abused and verbally abused, but one thing I want to say is, like, sometimes it can start with verbal and end up with physical if you're not careful. But it also just hurts the same amount, I think, and just in a different way, right? And it's just as impactful for women. And I'm not saying that only women go through this. I'm sure some men have gone through verbally abusive relationships. So I'm not saying that it's only a thing that happens for women, but it's just interesting how it can happen, and it's not something that's kind of like you see the red flag right away, right? And I think we talked about that.
Oh no, it's something that I mean, thank God I've only ever had one relationship that I can call that was verbally abusive, and that was with Mark, and that was for 6 years. And it doesn't start out that way. And it reminded me, I had read a long time ago an article by a woman who kind of broke the whole stereotype. Like, people thought of abused women were like the underclass, the poor women and all that. Well, she was a journalist, freelance writer for places like the Atlantic and the New York Times and this and that. And she wrote her story to say, people look at me and they say, I can't believe you were in an abusive relationship. And pretty much attract her experience in terms of that it kind of happened slowly. Yeah, I mean, these abusers, I don't think they consciously do it. But they kind of lead you there. And it's once you've kind of invested time and in this relationship, you're invested emotionally, you've invested a lot of time, then the switch starts to happen. And again, it's not necessarily boom. Like, I remember this woman, the article I first read, and she said the first time her husband hit her was on their wedding day. It was like he knew he had her cornered. And he had already started to move her away from her family and all that. The real hardcore ones like to isolate you away from your family and friends and people who will tell you otherwise. And they usually put on a charming exterior for all your friends and family. And Mark was he was intelligent, he was amusing. I mean, he was Mensa smart. I mean, he was actually one of the brightest men that I ever dated. And so when we first started dating, he took me out, we went to restaurants, and we had a really good time. And then he just slowly began to change. And it wasn't complimentary anymore. He would start, if I made a suggestion, like it turns out that he definitely was very, I want to say cheap, but he was a type that liked to hoard. He was a hoarder. That's another thing that he had. He hoarded money, but his house was loaded. He was really one of those hoarders where the house was literally piles of stuff that he couldn't let go of.
Wow.
And so after we dated a while and we were pretty much boyfriend and girlfriend, that's when he decided that, no, he just didn't want to spend any more money on us going out. And
so how soon after you started? Well, first of all, where did you meet him? And by the way, we've changed his name to Mark.
Yes.
Because we want to just not talk about, who it really is.
Yeah.
But so so maybe you can't really say how you met him, or I don't know.
I can. Yeah.
Okay.
There was a place. Okay, he worked for a telecom. I was living in Naperville, and that used to be the East-West Corridor. And he worked for a telecom. He was an engineer. He had a really good job. And they all kind of congregated at this bar called Jerry Sharko's, which is no longer in existence. But it was a place to go and dance.
Oh, okay.
And people that I had met, I was working for my stepbrother in his painting business after I'd moved back from New Orleans. And I met a very vivacious woman. She goes, oh, yeah, we like to dance. So I went out with her to this Jerry Sharko's, and that's where he and a bunch of other people from all the telecoms around there hung out. Okay. So, yeah, we started dancing and having a good time, and he showed respectful interest.
Okay.
He definitely asked me out. I mean, he did all the right things. There were no red flags.
Was he very charismatic type, or?
He had a really great sense of humor. And he, like I say, he was extremely intelligent. We could talk about anything. But yeah, he had a good sense of humor. He was attentive. He wasn't there were no red flags, really. Yeah. There weren't even any yellow ones. And I was in my 30s, and I was at the point, I was like looking to settle down.
Yeah.
And he let it be known that, he was a guy who wanted to settle down and probably have a family, a kid or two, or what. I mean, he was not.
He presented himself that way.
Yeah, and he did. He wasn't the type that was like dating 5 women at the same time. So
how soon after you started dating that transition start happening? And it's kind of hard because I think sometimes you're not privy to it because you know what I mean? Like you're going through a relationship. I don't know, unless you go like hindsight when it was, or do you remember kind of when it was where it started kind of taking a turn?
It definitely was very gradual. Like I say, and Mark never touched me. It wasn't that at all. But it was at, I'd have to say about maybe 3 to 6 months in, there were just sudden changes. Like I noticed the very first thing I remember noticing is that when he started complaining about all the money he was spending taking me out, and I was like really kind of surprised. Yeah. So I kind of thought of a compromise. And I said, well, how about this? It's cool we eat in or we, whatever. I wasn't really living with him. We were just going out on weekends at that time. I said, how about like one Saturday a month, we go and have a nice dinner? You would have thought that I had asked him to kill his firstborn child by even mentioning any kind of compromise like that. I mean, he went on a verbal harangue. I was spoiled. You spoiled Naperville women. Your parents just, and you think that everybody should, and it exactly, wow. It was, I remember that. That was one of the first times I remember. And it just kind of got worse from there in terms of that he controlled everything. And by his getting angry and having these like harangues, I didn't want any conflict. And I think that also what happens, at least for me, the one reason you start hanging in there is, again, the time that you've put in, and you know this person and other things are going well, but you remember that there was a nice guy at one time.
Yeah.
And you said, well, I know he's in there. And you start believing that. Did I do something to make this nice guy not be so nice anymore? And you said, well, I know he's in there. I know he's in there. I'm going to hang in there. We will eventually get back. But you never really get back. Because if it's not his way, it's totally the highway. And again, it's, you know what they say about the frog and the, you put a frog in boiling water and it'll leap out. You put a frog in like cool water and turn up the heat, and before they know it, they're boiled alive.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was just, I mean, there were all kinds of things like that. I was constantly told, oh, well, you're not a good girlfriend because good girlfriends always get involved with their boyfriend's hobbies. Of course, he never get involved with mine, but like, I'm not into Formula One racing. I'm not into photography.
Right.
But it's like for photography, I remember once we went winter camping around Lake Superior, and it was like 25 below zero.
Oh, God.
And he wanted to take pictures of the these little icebergs that come on shore of like Lake Superior. I wanted to sit in the car. Oh, my God, I couldn't do that. I had to stand out there with him while he took pictures. And again, it was a constant harangue of like, you've got to be a good girlfriend. How dare you want to sit, you want to sit in the car? And it was like, well, yeah, it's really cold. I'm not, but it was stuff like that all the time.
Wow.
Is that, I would be constantly dragged. He kind of thought that a woman was his appendage, that I was his appendage, and that I was there to support him. And there's another thing. I mean, there are a lot of stories.
No, I want to hear them because it's interesting for sure.
But actually, he was the one who got me into skiing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he got me into my first ski club. And one of our trips out west, Mark being very frugal. Thank you. Most of the people, when they go out west, I mean, again, these are like what they called yuppies at the time. They all had really good jobs. They want to go to restaurants and, that kind of thing. And we were all in the hot tub, which is something you do after you ski, and was trying to convince all the people in the club, oh, come on over to our condo. We're, meaning me, we're going to make like spaghetti or whatever. We'll have fun, but spaghetti and air, we don't need to go out and spend all that money.
Oh, my God.
And people were polite. I mean, I could tell they were polite. I think the one thing Mark kind of lacked was like emotional intelligence, like he couldn't read people very well. And they were going like, oh, yeah, well, we'll think of, just people, polite stuff. You can tell, to me, unless they say, sure, what time?
Right.
That they're really not serious.
And that's crazy to think that after a whole day of skiing, right?
Right.
And then, you're there on that vacation, and then you're going to go in a hot tub, and then somehow you're going to have the energy to make a big, huge spaghetti dinner and like not even have the courtesy to run it by you, right? He was just kind of like throwing it out to everybody.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That was also part of his belief system, was that because he never cooked or cleaned. That was women's work. He also had that ethic. And I would hear how I constantly didn't make enough money in my job, but that he really believed you should be making XK, whatever it was back then, and doing all the cooking and all the cleaning and all the... So, of course, he wasn't going to do any of the work. It would have been me. And, and when we wanted to go on vacation, he wanted me to do... It wouldn't be my vacation. It would be his vacation, because he expected me to do all the shopping and the cooking and the cleaning, instead of like, no, this is my vacation too, dude.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So anyway, we got back to the condo, and I said to him, well, is there anybody that we, so-and-so wants to go here and there? He goes, what do you mean? You heard them in the tub. They're going to come over here for dinner. And I went, Mark, I think people were just being polite. I got the feeling that they really didn't want, that they were just saying like they think about it. He goes, no, I'm telling you, they're coming over. And I go, well, why don't I call them and just double check on this? Maybe you're right. I knew he wasn't. But
right. The things we say, right? Maybe you're right.
So I call, and one by one, they all said, "Oh, no, thanks. We're going out with so-and-so to here, there, the other place." So I thought that was going to be settled because he was right there when I called these people because he wasn't going to call them. And when I hung up the phone, he absolutely flew off the handle and accused me of not supporting him because I did not convince these people to come to dinner.
Oh my goodness.
I think he was so hurt and embarrassed because he totally misread the situation and he misread these people, but it was my fault. And that was like one of the worst nights of my life because I wound up, he was so angry with me. Like we went into a downtown Steamboat Springs.
Yeah.
And he was trying to walk ahead of me. I mean, I literally was following him around. He was angry the entire evening, the entire time. And, again, here I thought, I've settled it. All these people said it, but it was my fault because I didn't convince him. I did not support him. And that was always an issue with him. I'm not a good enough girlfriend because I don't do the things he does. And I didn't support him. And I didn't convince these people to do something they didn't want to do.
In the first place, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just a couple of incidents of, what it's like to be with somebody who pretty much is controlling and places always, the blame is always placed on the partner. It's really never their fault.
Yeah, it's so irrational, right? Like it's so unreasonable. I think that's what it is. Unreasonable. It's like now you have to convince all these people to be on his plan that you don't even really want to do either. I'm sure. You'd rather just go out and have a good time. And then for him to point it on you. I think those are very controlling, manipulative behaviors, right?
Very.
And when you said the whole walking ahead, I've had two guys in my life do that, and I mean, very short-lived relationships or whatever, but that is one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody cannot walk next to you. For some reason, they got to walk ahead of you, and it's like there could be ice, snow, whatever. I could trip and fall. Somebody could mug me. That person would never have a clue what was going on because they're like 5 feet ahead of me. Like, I think it's so rude. And it just brings me back to some people. It's like, what? Why can't you just walk next to me?
Exactly. Unless you're in the wilderness and they're walking ahead, so in case a rattlesnake jumps out, it'll get them first, then that's fine. But
that's a different thing. Yeah.
But he was just so angry and he was pacing ahead, and I was being dragged along like an appendage, I didn't think at that time. I mean, now I would never ever put up with that. I'd say, bye.
Yeah, I know the Barbara I know now too. I'm like, you would not put up with that at all, which is awesome.
I remember telling you about that, and you were really surprised when I told you about being in this kind of relationship. And again, when I read that woman's story, and I'm so glad that she brought it to the fore because everybody was shocked. Here was this upper middle class, very educated woman who was in a very abusive relationship. And she says, people think it's always somebody else and that they're lower class and has something to do with alcoholism or drug abuse. And no.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like women should not be embarrassed of that, of speaking about that, because I think it can happen to anyone, to be honest. I feel like sometimes you just get sucked in, or if you're not expecting that, or if you've never been encountered by that, or there's just a lot of situations that you don't see it coming. Like you said, it was subtle, it was little changes here and there. By, I'm sure by the 5th, 6th year, it was a lion. You know what I mean? It was like this big thing. So you ended up moving in with him, right? Like you lived with him for a while.
Yeah, we bought a house together.
Oh, okay.
Which in a way was his cheapness, he kind of hoisted himself on his own petard.
That's a good phrase. I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
Hoisted on his own petard. Well, again, he insisted that I had to put up money on the house. We were engaged at the time, but
okay.
And this is another thing that he did when we got to the signing. Suddenly, his lawyer pulled out a prenup that this was all just totally it literally was a surprise. So we're sitting there, and there was a prenup where, and this is how he got hoisted, is that the prenup said that, okay, if we break up, all you're going to get back is your deposit.
What?
Yes. You would have no equity in the house and blah, 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 blah. And we're sitting there, and again, it's like under pressure. I was totally without warning. We never discussed it. It was my way or the highway. But when I was the one who left him. And when I did leave him, he was super angry because he had to give me back my deposit.
Wow.
I mean, literally, he had it, and he was livid. But hey, it was your idea. I wish I'd had presence of mind at that to either say no, we're going to discuss this, or I'm not signing, or say, okay, how about that with interest? You have to pay me X, But I got the money back, but for a couple of years it was tied up. I got absolutely no interest on it.
Now, did he put the same amount of money down that you put in?
Oh, no. He was a much higher wage earner than I was.
Oh, okay.
Much higher.
Okay.
But still, it was what I had.
Yeah.
It was pretty much all that I had. And even to get out of that relationship, when I left him, I signed over. My mother had given me her old station wagon to drive.
Okay.
I just signed it over to him. I mean, it really wasn't worth anything. And then I wound up having to go buy a used truck to get myself to my job and around. But it was so worth it.
Yeah. Just to get out, right? I know it's like like that. It's better to be in a poor house and be happy than in a rich, big place and be miserable. So, yeah. Wow. So, okay. So 6 years. So how many of that did you live with him?
Oh, 3.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that we bought it in 1992 and I left in 1995. So 2 to 3 years, something like that.
Okay. So within that time, I mean, is there another unique story that he did?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's tons.
How much time
did he ever
there?
okay, so the accusation of not being a good girlfriend, that was the first thing, the guilt trip, right?
Yeah.
Was there ever like verbal words you're an idiot, or you don't know, or those types of things, like those strong, or was it more subtly kind of like a situational thing?
Well, I got the fact that I was spoiled. I got the fact that I didn't appreciate him enough. He never called me stupid, that's for sure.
That's good.
But I mean, the whole situation was that it was like this. It was like his thumb was constantly on me, where we would go, what we would do. He never got involved in anything that I did. One of my issues, like I said, he was a hoarder, and I'm like talking girl, what you see on the Hoarders.
Oh, really?
That
my
God.
Big?
Oh my God.
He could have been in an episode of Hoarders.
He definitely could be in an episode of Hoarders.
Wow.
It was just, he never threw away anything. And the house just became, again, it's just hard. If you've seen any of the Hoarder things.
Oh, yeah.
Piles and everywhere.
My aunt was a hoarder, as little kids, we went to go visit her, and we couldn't even get to the inside. I mean, we couldn't even walk through the house. And it was so weird as a little kid because you don't really have a word for it. You're just like, we really can't go anywhere, and we really can't sit anywhere in her house. We just kind of walk through a little pathway.
Yes, pathway.
It was so weird.
Yeah, it's very, very weird. And he was so, Mark was so, his stuff. I mean, to these hoarder people, it's like sacrosanct. And I was developing products at that time for the backyard nature industry, and I needed a place to kind of work. And so in the basement one day when he was at work, I actually didn't throw anything out, but I organized the stuff down there into, and I'm not Miss Super Organizational, trust me. I've got my own clutter issues, but nothing like this. And so I organized everything okay, these are books on chemistry, or these, whatever. I made it nice and neat. I made a space that we could move. And then on his workbench, I totally cleared. I put his tools, all that kind of stuff. And when he came home, I said, okay, I did some organization of stuff. I want to show this to you. And he was immediately like, did you throw anything away? And I went, did not throw anything away. Just come on down and see what I did. And he was literally like making sure it was like he's going to be able to towel on piles and piles of stuff. I mean, this is a guy that, you know, when you get free posters at some event, he never threw those away. You know, those, you know, the Bud Light ones.
Yeah, whatever cheesy
advertisement, he couldn't throw those away. Oh no.
Oh, God. Wow.
And so he like inspected it, and okay, all right, I guess you did okay. All right. And then he proceeded to cover all those within the next day or two. He totally took over all the space that I had freed up that I thought I would be able to use to work on like projects. No, it was like, nope, because everything was his. As far as he was concerned, not just me, everything was his to dispose of as he saw fit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So what was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak? You were finally done with him.
This is a little embarrassing, but I'm going to say what happened is I had developed a product for the Backyard Nature store. I was working for a Backyard Nature store, and I had developed a self-filling, recirculating bird bath fountain, which I actually got a patent on.
Okay. Oh,
later.
wow.
Yeah, just a few years later.
Oh,
but
my God.
I needed someone to make it for me.
Okay.
And up in Wisconsin, and it had to be lightweight enough because I mean I had it made out of concrete, but you can't ship concrete.
Yeah.
So I found a stucco like manufacturer up in Wisconsin, and this guy, I'll call him, what should I call him? Rick. Totally, I mean, he was another dead end, but he totally swept me off my feet by giving me all the affirmation that I wasn't getting. He'd say, oh my God, I can't believe how smart you are. You're so pretty. You're so charismatic. I mean, I just can't, I was getting that from him.
Yeah.
So it kind of took the dynamite of an infatuation to snap me out of it. And I mean, I remember I was home listening to Bruce Springsteen's Human Touch over and over and over. And I realized it was I couldn't stand it anymore. And I actually moved out of the bedroom we were sleeping in and into a spare bedroom. And the other kind of giveaway for me, I mean, I was starting to hide bottles of wine around the house just to keep me numb enough. You get to the point you're so numb, which is why I think that, as I say, my soul kind of thought, if we don't get out of this, this is going to bury us alive. And that's why I think like I fell in love with Rick. But it, I mean, that turned out to be another dead end. But that's
but at
that
least it was
But it literally was the dynamite that got me out.
Wow.
So I had moved into a spare bedroom, and I kind of like, I don't know if you know the story about Katie Holmes and Tom Cruise. I pretty much did. I did the same thing. Well, she planned her escape.
Oh yeah.
Because
I do remember that part.
Remember that she planned.
Yeah, he was on
it.
a movie set, wasn't he? In some other country.
Yeah, and she was lucky enough to have a father who was a divorce attorney, a very high-end, very knowledgeable one.
Yeah, that was really weird.
But what I did is that it was 6 to 8 weeks before I left, but I was making plans. So of course I talked to my mother about, and she said, you're my daughter. You're always welcome home. And she never liked Mark anyway. So, but even if she did, she would say, no, you're always welcome home.
Oh.
I started like kind of moving some stuff, some clothes and stuff out that he wouldn't have noticed. But the thing was, we were socially kind of enmeshed with the ski club, and there were different, and Easter was coming up at his parents' house. And so I kind of planned for our last social, the day after our last social function, which was a going away party for a good friend in the ski club, that I was going to tell him I was leaving that day.
Mm-hmm.
But that happened, it was like, that happened a week after Easter. And I remember when we were, I mean, and the funny thing is that when you know you're going to escape, the closer it comes, the more antsy you get. You just, you know, you're just dying to, and I became kind of irritable and, you know, was talking back to him a little bit. But at that point, he was thinking like, oh, because we weren't getting along, he was kind of, okay, we're just going to wait and work this thing out. And we were driving to his parents' house, and I had like a cup of coffee on there, and he kind of hit the brakes real fast, and it fell down, and he started to yell at me, and I just lit into him.
Oh my God, yeah.
I just totally lit into him, and he just kind of shut up. I mean, it was funny because, you know, I think he kind of sensed something, but he really didn't. Here's the thing. I moved out of the bedroom, dude, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Whatever. We're not getting along. And then finally, the day after this party, he thought we were going to sit down and we were going to fix it. It's like, no, a relationship is not like a car. But, and I basically just came in and said, you know, I'm done. I'm leaving. I feel no love. This relationship isn't working. It's better off. I'm out of here. And he was stunned.
Wow.
And it's like, he did not see it coming. And I'm thinking, how could you not see this coming? One more interesting little fact. I had an engagement ring. It was really this really pretty little emerald, blah, 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 but it was always too loose. 6 weeks before I left him, I had lost it. It had slipped off my finger while I was working, and I could never find it. And I thought, oh my God, am I going to get it when he finds out I've lost the ring?
Yeah.
He did not notice. I never had the ring on my finger.
Wow. What?
I know. I was so afraid, and I thought, like, he's not even noticing I'm not wearing the ring anymore.
Weird.
And and then, of course, after I left, he said he wanted the ring back, and I said, dude, I lost that 6 weeks ago, and you never noticed. And then, of course, he accused me of, that me and Rick sold the ring for the money. And I said, dude, no.
Yeah.
So he got the insurance. But I mean, like things like that. But he was stunned. It's like, how could you be stunned?
That's interesting. He sounds like not only is he not self-aware, but he's not aware of other people's emotions or feelings, or maybe it's self-centeredness, like it's his way and he's throwing this path down and that's it, and that's all he's looking at. He's never internalizing or thinking like, is my behavior, you know, like, am I wrong, or why is she upset? Did I do something wrong? Like, there's never that internal talk or clock or whatever.
Right.
It's just always everybody else's fault.
Right. It's everyone else's fault. Like I say, very little emotional intelligence. We used to watch, I don't know if you guys ever watched Northern Exposure. That was like, it was a really cool series, like back in the 90s or whatever. And they always it always had a theme. It had kind of a moral. And he never got it. He'd say, okay, so he liked it. He goes, now what's the moral of this week's episode? And I remember saying once, well, it's basically that, you know, we're all we are all one. That we're all. And he says, well, that sounds really arrogant. And I said, no, it's not about arrogance. It's about humility. It's like he did not even get the concept of that if you and I are one, I mean, that we are all one.
Right.
And so you don't treat anybody badly, and that you have compassion for other people. It's like,
right. It was just
oh, well, that's being arrogant, that, you know, that you're, it's like, how we ever got that, I have no idea.
Wow.
But I do think it was kind of a lack of that. And he did go on to marry somebody who he treated very badly. I mean, the same way.
Yeah.
She was a lot more quieter and more accepting of the treatment, but she left him eventually.
Oh, really?
I did 6 years. I found out that she did 10.
Oh, wow.
before she like left him.
Yeah,
But
unbelievable.
and she went through 4 years more of it than I did. So
Yeah, right. It took a toll too, being married, because you're like, you feel more trapped, I think, than when you're just living with somebody. Although, like, buying a house together is kind of trapping, but at least you got the deposit. And it's funny because he created that, and then he was upset.
Yeah, exactly.
it.
Then he was upset because it was in the like prenup, and then I was like, well, good thing,
Yeah, good thing
he
it
did
was
do
in a
it.
way. Yeah. So, what lessons did you learn, or what would you tell other people that are in this kind of similar situation, or I don't know?
Okay. Always be alert for any kind of disrespect. They don't have to call you stupid and ugly and all that kind of stuff. Like with him, it was like, you're spoiled. You just don't understand the value. You don't appreciate me. The minute that anything like that starts to happen, and also when it always has to be my way or the highway, when you start sensing that, get out. Because it's not going to get any better. No matter how sweet they were at the beginning, they seem to have a real sense for when they can start to turn. And again, I don't think it's conscious. I mean, there's not like a game plan. Like, okay,
Yeah.
it is definitely something within their makeup. I mean, he came from a background of having a Jekyll and Hyde alcohol abuser for a father.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of it stems from treatment like that, to where he feels probably he always had to be in control. It always had to be his way. So seeing any signs like that, nobody should ever speak to anybody with that kind of disrespect. You can have arguments with your significant other about a lot of things, but if there's a lack of respect, if there's contempt, that's the number one sign. When they start showing contempt towards you for who you are, go.
Yeah.
Say, no, I'm not tolerating this. I don't know if any kind of therapy would have really helped at that point, to be quite honest. Maybe there is some kind of therapy, but I would just say go, because it pretty much drains all the love out of you. And, like I say, I just became very numb, to what was going on.
Yeah.
And I was miserable. But I think the other thing that really kind of helped me is I did see happy couples. And I'm looking like saying, I want that.
Yeah.
I want the fact that, Bob listens to Marta with respect and leaves her speak. He supports her. She does the same to him. I mean, you start thinking like, oh, so I don't have to settle for this. You start saying like, I just don't have to settle for this.
That's good. I love that. And I think one of my friends has a phrase that says, you'll always remember how someone made you feel. And I think that's
so
huge,
true.
right? Because you can hang out with somebody and afterwards you feel like you're on top of the world and you're important and you could conquer the world. And you can hang out with somebody else that is a Debbie Downer or whatever it is, negative, or kind of puts you down or kind of throws little jabs at you, and you're just like, man, I'm miserable right now. Like, I just can't amount to anything.
Yeah.
Like, and it all has to play in with that and that control behavior. But I love that about disrespect. It's funny. I mean, I'm not married. I'm single, but I've seen people in situations and even people that you don't know very well. And one thing I do not care for, and it stems with disrespect, is when you're with, like, maybe having dinner with different couples, and all of a sudden, like, one of them is like, oh, and this one, da 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 da, and this one, da 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 da, and it's like this intolerable.
This one,
like this whole week's worth of terrible things that this one did, and it's like, wow, first of all, I don't need to know all the bad things he did, and then a lot of people feel like I think the person talking thinks that they're upping one on this guy, or the girl, but really everybody looks at that person as like the jerk or the person that's dysfunctional, and the person that's receiving all the terrible comments they feel terrible for, and like they're the hero in the story. They're like, poor people, like poor person's having to deal with this,
Right.
and it is weird to have that kind of dynamic, and it's something that I've never cared for, and I've always said, like, I will never date a guy that does that to me. Like, the minute he does that, that's it. I'm gone. I have to be gone.
I have that brought up a really good memory about leaving him. So after I decided to move out, where we lived, we had this sweet couple, elderly couple.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, they were just the nicest people. I really wish I could remember their names, but they were just so lively and loving and warm.
Yeah.
And when they heard I was moving out and they saw me move my stuff, I remember the man came over me and he said to me, "You're such a wonderful, beautiful, beautiful young woman." He said, "You're making the right decision." I mean, he was so sweet.
Oh my gosh,
he said,
yeah.
"I wish you nothing." He goes, "I'm sorry that I won't get to see you anymore, but you're making the right decision." I mean,
that's
he was
awesome.
so, I mean, that just broke my heart wide open to hear, that he was a great guy. He really, really was a great guy. And that was just really sweet to hear.
Yeah, that's just kind of like confirmation of what you're doing is right, even though inside you
Yeah.
knew you were. But yeah, it's like
Right.
a little cheerleader on the sidelines saying, "Hey, way to go! Get out of this weird relationship." And you've brought your story that you wrote
Yes.
right from storytelling, and I'm so excited to hear it.
It's a story. I think I tell other stories where Mark is involved, but this is one of the last times I saw him.
Okay.
And I haven't told it in a long time, so I hope you don't mind I read it.
No, that's okay. You can read it. It's great.
Yeah, this is one of the last times I saw him. And it was 4 days after I did wind up marrying a wonderful guy, as you know, Kent.
Yes.
Who, unfortunately, after us being together for almost 9 years, died of aggressive B-cell lymphoma. So it was 4 days after his death. And
Okay.
because I have to let you know, Mark and I were still kind of in the same social group. Like, our ski club was still having parties and stuff like that. We were more like a big group of friends at this point.
Okay.
All of us. So
Okay.
because I wasn't going to give it up. And he
Yeah.
wasn't either.
Good
so,
for you.
yeah.
Good for you.
So New Year's Eve 2006, 4 days after the death of my husband Kent from aggressive B-cell lymphoma, and I'm feeling the raw pain of newborn grief. The last 4 days I awake and forget he's dead and think I have to go downtown and be with him, until I remember a few seconds later and the thick fog of grief seeps back in. I don't know what to do with myself. Since the last 20 months, the University of Chicago Medical Center was practically our home. So just like we keep looking for something we've lost by returning to the last place we remember having it, like our keys, our wallet, my mind keeps returning to the ICU room where I lost him. I agonize whether to attend the New Year's Eve party planned by our mutual friends, as I don't feel like going and I don't feel like staying home either. And then I realize whether I go there or stay home, grief will be my constant companion. I decide showing up at the party will worry my friends less, and their company will give me some comfort and hopefully respite from the exhausting cycle of crying jags followed by periods of emotional numbness. I'm the first to arrive at Rich's house, a compassionate friend who's the host for the party this year. Can I swear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can for this one.
He hugs me and asks how I'm holding up. I shrug, feeling pretty fucking awful when I'm not feeling totally fucking awful. Rich gives me party prep to occupy me, make the hot spiced wine, stir the little smoky wieners and barbecue sauce, help me feel more useful and less fucking awful. Other friends soon arrive and swaddle me in heartfelt hugs and sighs of "I'm so sorries" and share their tears of grief over the loss of their good friend too. Among them is my ex-fiancé Mark, but he says nothing. We had been engaged until I abruptly walked out on him 3 years before I met Kent. Our relationship was for me a contentious 6-year-long slide into an abyss of unhappiness and despair that ended when I left him for another man, something he's perhaps understandably never forgiven me for doing. Though our relationship ended years ago, Mark does a strange staring ritual whenever we meet. He stares into yet past my eyes, ignoring the woman standing before him, searching for the other Barb, the one who for 6 years felt his cruel verbal put-downs and unpredictable tantrums were her fault and felt it was her responsibility to make him happy. But she transformed into someone he doesn't recognize, a woman who knows her worth and moved on long ago and found a genuine love. Instead, he behaves like she's just hiding somewhere behind my eyes, waiting for him to liberate her. His weaving stare reminds me of a lion tamer in Jodhpurs and pith helmet, wielding a whip and chair, trying both to protect himself and make me come to heel. But this evening he barely glances at me before isolating himself in the garage with a few of our friends. And I understand the reason behind his avoidance. You see, Mark is a survivor of stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma, a slower-growing, more curable form of blood cancer than Kent's. He and I met a year after he was in remission, and happily still is, but he's always feared it might return. My mournful presence churns up this dormant fear as Kent's death represents the reality that it may return to cut his life short, too. The evening progresses, though I am standing still within the solitary bubble of grief. My plan is to leave before midnight so people can wish each other a Happy New Year without the awkwardness of my presence. I wish everybody Happy New Year and exit through the garage where Mark has spent most of the night avoiding me, getting drunk on 7 and 7 spiked with his own fear and self-pity. He confronts me saying, "Sorry to hear about Kent's death, but don't you wonder why he's dead and I'm still alive? Do you wish it was me who was dead instead of him?" These questions momentarily rock me back on my heels, but I soon understand they come from his view of life as a zero-sum game. When I left him, he scored it as a win in my column and a loss in his. Kent's death is get back somehow, a rebalancing of the ledger, and proof that I made the wrong choice since he, Mark, is still alive. He delivers these heartless questions with a kaleidoscope of emotions all playing out on his face. Schadenfreude at my comeuppance, sorrow for Kent's death, and perhaps my pain, but mostly fear of the return of his own Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's my turn to stare, bewildered and saddened, and a little fucking angry. No, Mark, I don't think that. I don't wish anyone to die of this fucking disease. How could you think that of me? He shrugs, looks relieved I don't hate him, and smugly satisfied he landed the emotional blow he had been planning in a drunken haze all the evening. As I drive away, I'm still reeling at the knowledge he was trying to hurt me at my most vulnerable. Yet surprisingly, what I feel in response to his naked antipathy is compassion, because he still lives in fear of his cancer returning, and pity that he hasn't let go of his bitterness and learned how to forgive me for hurting him. And though I didn't need it, his outburst is further proof my rebellion was a just and right one. For the moment, I find a pyrrhic release from the pain of my loss in feeling a much deeper sadness for him. And I realize that somewhere, somehow, from out of the shadow of my grief, perhaps because of it, I forgave him and myself for the unhappiness we caused each other.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Wow, that was something. He was just...
Can you imagine someone saying that to someone who just lost their spouse, you know?
Yeah.
Don't you wonder why I'm still alive and he's not? It's like...
It's so... Yeah. I don't even have a word for it. I don't even know what to say to that. It's like self-centered and selfish and evil and mean and cruel and like a bunch of those all rolled up into one, and just a horrible person.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably, I think one of the last times I saw him. I don't, there may have been some other times, but it really didn't matter.
Yeah.
That was sort of like, yeah.
Wow. I'm so glad you had a Kent.
Oh,
though.
Yeah, he was like, he was like the complete opposite. So, you know, when you go back to the question, anybody who ever talks with you with disrespect, that's not, they don't love you. I mean, because again, you can have hard disagreements with people you love without making them feel small. I mean, anytime anyone shows any kind of contempt, you know, do something about it. You know, call them out on it. If it continues, get out, because that person's just not going to change.
Yeah, good points. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that toxicity is there, and it's rearing its head, and I think it's only going to get worse, right? It's just like it starts off small, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and people get sucked in more, and it's harder to get out the longer you stay. So yeah, I agree. And I feel like that in every relationship, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, friendships, whatever. Sometimes you have to take a step back and remove that person from your life, just for your own sanity and for your own well-being and your self-respect, all of those things. But yeah,
the other thing that he had that I totally pick up now, he also really he was a misogynist. He had really negative views about women. And I would say to anybody, like say if a man is with a woman and she's always like, oh, you men do blah-de-blah, you men are this way. Whenever there's that kind of antipathy and that kind of immediate distrust and dislike of the, okay, in the case of heterosexual relations, the other sex, that to me is a huge red flag. If actually this past weekend I was skiing, and somebody from our group in the hot tub, within 5 minutes of introducing himself to me, called another woman in our group a bitch. And I immediately, it was like, boom, red flag. Yeah, nice knowing you. Boom. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And he said it with some vehemence. And it was like, no, I don't, when I think about Kent, it's like, he would have never talked about a woman like that. He never would have talked about that. I mean, he never. Oh my God. It's like I used to like watching The Sopranos, and he couldn't watch it because there was so much violence, and especially violence against women. He could not tolerate it.
Wow.
His idea of violence was like, the fakey action movie kind of stuff. But that was just so realistic. Yeah. But then he'd start listening to how good it was, and then he'd come in. But he could not watch violence against women, especially.
Wow, that's something. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I never thought of it that way. Like, because you hear men in bars or whatever talking like that, just, oh, she's a this and she's a that. And I never think of it. I just always think that they're addressing that person, and they would never call me that.
No,
but
no.
That's,
and it's different. Like,
it's interesting.
I mean, I had an older brother.
Yeah.
So, like, I know. It's one thing, like, guy talk.
Yeah.
Or I love the way the British put lad talk. Lad movies. It's like, I'm not one of the lads. And women are not one, and when you get together and you want to talk whatever, smack about women is one thing. That's like lad talk.
Yeah.
Keep it with the lads.
Yeah, keep it with the lads.
Keep it with the lads. True. And, I mean, it's not like we don't sit around sometimes and like, oh God, can you believe he said that? Whoa! But it's
what a douchebag.
What a douche. But again, that's like chick talk or whatever.
Yeah, gotcha.
Chick talk.
Chick talk. Yeah.
But again, it's like, but I don't bring that into relationships.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Men, and if I have a disagreement with a man, I might say, "Oh, you men."
That's true. You can't lump them all together into one bushel. No. I agree with you. And I have had comments swirl to me like, oh, you women this and you women this. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not that way. Like, that's the first thing I say. I was actually, anyway, I won't say where, but somebody said something like that. And I was like, I'm not like that. Like, I'm pretty reasonable, or I'm not like, like you can't lump everybody together in one big, huge bucket, of gender, or all females are this way or all men are this way, because it's definitely not true.
It's definitely not true. And it's like, I think that I think basically that I don't really have a lot of prejudices. I mean, because I've known some wonderful, wonderful men, and they're all individuals.
Yeah.
And when I see those individuals that aren't showing respect or have these kind of like global ideas about what my sex is like, I'm just not interested.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a narrow-mindedness for sure, and it's going to play out in every relationship that they're in, because that's what they're bringing into the table right off the bat. They have like this negative view, you know. But anyway, anything else you want to add? I think it was a really good conversation, and I think it'll help a lot of people.
I guess the other thing is that I was pretty much ready for a relationship, and I didn't really feel rushed, but I have heard a lot of people say that abusive people can give you what they call the bums rush. You know, kind of love bomb you with it. Love bomb you.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're so wonderful. You're the person I've been looking for my whole life,
Yeah.
and flowers and candy.
Yeah.
And that usually, when I have felt rushed by men,
Yeah.
that is a turn off for me. It's like my little spidey sense goes, there's something not right here. You don't even know me yet.
Yeah.
You know, wait till you really let's get to know each
Yeah.
other, and then you can tell me that, oh, I'm
Yeah.
wonderful and this and that. So
That's a great point, because I know, like, when I was teen years or early 20s, like, yeah, I loved when people laid it on thick. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You know, and all of those words, because I'm a words girl, and so the words, and like, oh, you're beautiful. And
That's
you're
your
this,
love
and you're that.
language.
Yeah, that's that's probably my biggest love languages.
Yes.
But yeah, just like, yeah, you're this and you're that and you're whatever, and I would eat that up, and I was just like, I never thought it was like full of crap. I was just like, oh yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. Now when a man comes on strong, it's kind of like, okay, what are your intentions? You know, you're just like, wham bang, thank you, ma'am. I mean, I think you probably say this to a lot of other people, not just me.
Exactly.
You know, and not to put off flirting. I mean, guys, please flirt, and please, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
get out there and ask girls out. But yeah, I agree with you. I'd rather a guy be more genuine and just come and be like, hey, how's it going? How was your day?
Talk to me like
What's
I'm a human
going
being.
on? Yeah, and get to know what I'm about. Another quick pet peeve, like, yeah, some guys just talk all about themselves. Like, I've noticed that, like, they never ask you anything about your
No.
life, and you're like, wow, he knows nothing about me, and I know everything about him, but he knows nothing about me. I think that's
Right.
another big, like, something's off with this. But anyway, it was great talking to you. We're gonna have
thank
to
you for
close
having
this
me.
out.
This is so
I'm
much fun.
I know, right? I'm so glad you came over, and thanks again for your time, and thanks for your friendship, girl.
You and I are tight. We will always be tight.
Definitely.
For
and
sure.
and applause and good luck with all the storytelling.
Thank
It's
you.
awesome and phenomenal. So yeah, maybe I can go out.
Yeah,
with you
on
that
Monday.
day.
I will.
Yeah.
I'll
Text
let
me.
you know what's happened for sure. It'll be so much fun. I'd love to have your face in the audience.
Oh, it would be awesome.
We
Yeah,
can maybe
definitely.
go eat dinner like in Evanston.
Of course, yeah. Anybody else want to come and join us? We'll give you all the details.
It's the Space in Evanston.
It's
7
a space,
o'clock.
yeah, Space in Evanston Monday. What day is it on? Monday, February
the 28th.
the 28th. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again, Barbara.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this.
Awesome.
Take care.